Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Cinema Lab. I am Sarah Naraki. I'm the director of Wealthy Theater, and today I am here with, the Island of Misfit Toys. How's it going, guys?
Hi.
Hey.
Great.
So today we are talking about, it's hard to say it's the best Christmas movie because I know we could get into a whole thing about Muppets Christmas Carol and all that, but one of the quintessential Christmas films, Home Alone, the first one. So for anyone who's joining us who has never been part of Cinema Lab or Screen Club, we are going to be spoiling pretty much the entirety of the film. So if you haven't watched it yet, please pause this, go watch it. Also, shame on you. And then come check this out later. This video is going to be archived on Wealthy Theater's YouTube page. And then we also have a podcast of this that you can catch later too, that Caleb jazzes up with some extra flayers of music and I don't know, bits from movies and all that good stuff. So there you go. Spoiler alert is in full effect. And before we dive into the movie, let's get to know our panelists here. So, who are you people? Why are you joining me tonight? Caleb, who are you?
Hi. I forgot to prepare an intro, so I don't
I don't know who I am.
But I was roughly 10 years old in 1990, which is the same age that Mr. Culkin himself was, even though he was playing 8 in the film. So I was right there on the ground floor.
So you guys are like practically best friends then?
Pretty much, yeah. Well,
Cool.
my brother, my younger brother, when he was very young, had more than a passing resemblance to Kevin McAllister in this film, so much so that people would comment on it. He doesn't look anything like Macaulay Culkin now. It's weird. But back then...
Well, Macaulay Culkin has a unique look now. I think
Well, he sure does.
what we can say.
That he does.
Sweet.
Well, also joining us, Hayes Griffin. What's up, man? Tell us
Howdy,
about
man.
yourself. Why are you here today?
I don't know. An email showed up in my inbox, and I was dumb enough to say yes. No.
Just wanted a reason to show off that blazer.
That is pretty
That's right.
true. You can only bust this out so many times a year, you know what I mean? So it's got to get your use out of it. Anyways, hey folks, Hayes Griffin. I'm a musician. I live in Grand Rapids. It's good to be back with you folks talking about movies. We get to talk about John Williams tonight, and that's what I'm most excited about. If you don't know John Williams, also shame on you.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I spoil this movie for you in talking about it tonight.
If you don't know John Williams, you are not alive.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
sorry.
But I'm just a passionate millennial, so he was the soundtrack to my childhood, as I always say when we bring him up.
And last but not least, live from Florida. What's up, Virginia?
Hello, I am here as a concerned parent because this film is stressful to me now. I was 2 years old when it came out and watched it as a kid thinking, I could do that. I could live in a house by myself, make my own macaroni and cheese that he'd never had time to eat, which also bothered me. I was like, that time management seemed poor. You put all these booby traps, you can't even eat your dang dinner with your milk and your champagne glass. But I digress. I'm here as a concerned parent to really just both celebrate and point out all the reasons why this film now gives me the anxiety sweats because I just really want him to be reunited with his family, even Buzz. So excited to be here and can't wait to once again be shown up by the themed background that Caleb has provided for us.
I think you're in second place, though, with the Game of Thrones kind of thing going on. I love it.
Yeah.
I want it to be festive.
That's great. That's great. So another note for anybody who's tuning in right now live, if you guys want to join in on the conversation, normally this is done in person at Wealthy Theater in our micro cinema. And we like to do this kind of book club style for both Cinema Lab and Screen Club. So if you have some thoughts or questions or comments or anything like that, please comment below and we'll try to add it to the discussion as we go. Otherwise, you can just hear us ramble on about our anxieties and jealousy. And why don't we start with jealousy? You're talking about being anxious watching this film. I'm anxious that, I'm about the same age as the parents and I can't afford this house and 9 first-class tickets to Paris for my family. What?
Well,
Yikes.
more on that later. More on that when we get to when we get to the conspiracy corner of the night.
Yes, the conspiracy corner coming up later. All right, so Caleb, you told us that you Home Alone and that you were the same age as Macaulay Culkin when he was in this. So tell us about your experience of watching Home Alone and how vicariously did you live through him?
Well, I mean, in 1990, every single human being on planet Earth went to see this movie. That's not really too much of an exaggeration. I mean, you guys are aware that it made $500 million.
Well, it was the number one movie for like 12 weeks and then was only surpassed by The Hangover 2 as like
Right.
the most
Highest grossing
profitable.
live
Yeah,
action comedy for 20 years.
that's wild.
And it wasn't that expensive to make, considering. So, everybody went to see it. I have a specific memory of my grandma taking me to see it. And I really enjoyed it. I really dug it. But once the violence started, she laughed harder than I did. I think she laughed harder than anybody in the theater, kids included. This was a real favorite of hers. So it's fun to rewatch and think about her and remember that time. But yeah, this was just huge in a way that I don't know how you'd replicate it today for a family film to make that much money and be that wildly successful. It's just crazy.
Well, and it caused a lot of like trends and franchise stuff. Of course, there's 1,000,001 sequels. It's like The Land Before Time, 24. But I remember when I saw it, and I'm a little younger than you, it still just like stuck with me and my brothers and my family. And at some point we got a Walkman and we had the Game Boy game, like super into it. I swear to God, my brother had that same Michael Jordan cutout that he uses in the living room thing too. Like we were all about it. Hayes, what about you?
Yeah, I think I maybe had more your experience, Sarah. I was born in 88, so
What?
Me too.
yeah. So I would have caught the like tail of kind of like what Caleb was talking about, though. It was a ridiculously popular movie when it came out, right? Like I think the statistic that stuck with me was like $285 million it grossed in its first weekend at the box office
In 1990.
1990.
in
Yeah,
1990,
that's insane.
and I think it was on a budget of something like 18 million,
Mhm.
right? So like I think they got their money's worth out of that
They
movie.
did all right.
But like it's exactly like what you said. It was franchised. We had the tapes when I was a kid, so like every Christmas you watch the tape of Home Alone, all that kind of stuff. It was on, and as we got older, it got on like what TNT or TBS, like every network. It's like it rotated through the holidays. It was just always on in the background. So that was kind of mine, but I was always affected by the sounds too. Like obviously I became a musician. The John Williams soundtrack was just the thing that resonated with me as a kid. So yeah, it's funny because like that the theme to this movie has now become a Christmas standard. Like high school choirs sing that song now.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's my experience. I love this movie. It's near and dear to my heart.
It's so good. The soundtrack. I cannot wait till we get to that part. But
Yeah.
Virginia, how about you? Did you grow up watching this film too?
I did. It was a part of kind of a wave of churches being like having a moment in like the late 80s and 90s, because I'm also a massive fan of the Sister Act films. The best news for me this week was learning that Disney Plus was going ahead with both Sister Act 3 and Hocus Pocus 2, giving Captain and Jimmy work for years to come. But like that kind of vibe of, this massive sanctuary and choirs, to Hayes's point, I feel like it was such like they were having a moment in like the late 80s and 90s to where it was kind of a recurring set or theme, which I thought was really kind of fun. Had the VHS, now as an adult own the 2-disc DVD with Home Alone and Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Again, as a parent, can these parents just keep track of their child? Like, I get it. Cash in on that sequel for sure. Make that money. Give Donald Trump, I guess, another job. Like, do what you need to do, cameo style. But like, guys, keep an eye on your kid. don't give him some luggage that has your credit card in it to let him just also be at the plaza in New York. Sure, cool. I know it was the 90s, but it's still the plaza in New York. So I don't know when we're getting into conspiracy corner, but I need to know what the McAllisters were doing for money, because this is now 2 films in this franchise with the same cast, where they are basically American royalty, and I have no idea why. Because also their extended family got to like, that seems outlandish. So either he was in some sort of organized crime
Ding,
situation.
ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, that's
There
what
it
I was
is.
thinking. But if we're, comparing him to Tony Soprano, it seems like a lighter way to tell that story. So I appreciate that. Also, this was a John Hughes produced film. So as someone who grew up loving 80s films, probably at too young of an age, like was exposed to like, the Brat Pack probably before puberty, I appreciated that, he produced it. Christopher Columbus directed it, who we maybe also know directed the first 2 Harry Potter films. In terms of style and sense memory and things like that, it was really big for me too.
Here's a great visual of all different things that Chris Columbus was involved in. Yeah, this film is a trifecta. As you said, we've got John Hughes, who concepted the story. You've got Chris Columbus directing it. You've got John Williams scoring it. It's incredible, and I think that's one of the reasons why this film holds up so well. But I wanted to ask you guys what you thought about that. Like, how is it that this film is still funny? Or are there any parts that just didn't age too well? Caleb, let's throw it back to you. What do you think about that?
I mean, this was kind of a moment where the 80s culminated in these people like Spielberg, Columbus, Bob Zemeckis, who understood that younger people want to feel a little bit older, and older people want to feel a little bit younger, and understood exactly like how to give them entertainment that served both of those things. And I sort of feel like with Spielberg shepherding these other filmmakers and kind of creating the zeitgeist of that style of movie, they understood how to make something timeless and both be appealing to elderly people and to tiny little kids. And I don't know what the modern equivalent of that would be. Probably Pixar has found a way to do that, but I don't know if anybody in between has really come up with that formula. So, I mean, it was a time when movies weren't made for such a tight demographic like they are today. It was sort of like, you just went to the movies and whatever was on you watched, which is very different from now. So filmmakers making films for a very different era. But it's they knew what to keep in and what to keep out, that we'd be watching it decades later.
I like that thought that you have about this film being a platform for adults to live vicariously through younger eyes, and then kids to kind of act like adults or feel like they could be adults for a minute. And I don't know why I was thinking about Hocus Pocus too, since Virginia mentioned it earlier, but I feel like that's the same kind of equation that plugs in there too, because you've got kids who, I mean, their parents aren't like completely absent. They're just under a spell at a ball in town, But they're kids that have to go act like adults, and then you have these witches who are trying to regain their youth. So that's why that one's so timeless, huh? Virginia, what do you think about that? What do you think helps with this film to be so timeless?
So you mentioned it in the notes, as we were prepping for this, and the cast to me being as it's so well-rounded in terms of just truly iconic comedic actors, right? So we've got Catherine O'Hara, we've got Daniel Stern and Joe Pesci, who are like a dynamic duo that I wasn't expecting, right? Because we know Joe Pesci a lot in a lot more of these kind of more serious roles. So I think casting him opposite Daniel Stern was almost in a way like a Jeff Daniels, Jim Carrey kind of a decision, right? With Dumb and Dumber. Oftentimes we know Jeff Daniels to be able to also pull off these very dramatic roles. And so when you have this kind of unexpected marriage of two different types of character actors, but then also basically giving them roles that have such physicality, like the physical comedy is outrageous, not just the like paint cans hitting their faces, but like even, you know, the two of them holding onto the railings, trying to get up the icy steps. Like I was like truly giggling, like watching them try to navigate that, because it reminded me of my first years in Michigan. But also John Candy is timeless, you know? So when you put all these people together and you got them in these different combinations, and you kind of, you know, you have Catherine O'Hara kind of playing this very stressed out, but also kind of absent-minded parent, right? Like, how do you get on a plane and forget your kid? And, you know, all of the things that happen that lead into this. I think it's just like the perfect recipe for it to be long-standing, but also even just like the little bit role supporting cast, like the old couple at the airport where he's like, she's got a whole box of them at home, you know. It just like they really cast these characters, and the writing was so good that I think, you know, stuff like that. Similarly, right, Catherine O'Hara in Beetlejuice, you know, these kind of roles you can watch kind of over and over again, at least in my mind, and I think probably we all have a shared opinion of that. So that's kind of my theory on that. And also Daniel Stern played the father in our very first show that we chose for Screen Club, Shrill. He played A.D. Bryant's dad in Shrill and has a really great, like, funny arc, but obviously is like much older. So I just like seeing that a lot of these people are still working. They're still kind of doing their thing. Catherine O'Hara obviously was on Schitt's Creek, and it's just a gift that keeps on giving. So it's appropriate that we're talking about her during the holidays, because what a gift to us all.
Definitely. You talked about the script being really well done, and it's a tight script. It's really dynamic too. Like there's a lot going on, and I'm really mad that I forgot to write this down. But I'd watched that. What is it called? The Movies That Made Us. You know that series that's on Netflix, and they have one that's on Home Alone, and they talked about how long it took John Hughes to write the script, and I swear it was something like 12 days. And like, man, it takes me that long just to concept an idea for a script. And you got a whole fleshed out script done that quick. But that's just how he was. He would just be cranking out scripts while he's working on another movie. And yeah, he too was a gift for us all, for sure. The
Can you imagine this movie with James Spader in it though? Just like, just be like a real anxiety, or like what's the word I'm looking for, jerk of a kid, which is like he'd be a teen.
Yeah, well, and I heard that
him playing Old Man Marley.
Oh, I met him in the Macaulay Culkin role, but also that would have worked too. It would just be a popped collar and like you know, a real cool blazer.
I heard too. Speaking of like potential different roles. Robert De Niro and also John Lovitz were out for Joe Pesci's role, which I can't imagine what this would have been with John Lovitz. I could see De Niro, like that kind of makes sense. You got sort of the same vibe going on, but John Lovitz is just such a ham. It wouldn't be the same. You know, you wouldn't have that angry thing, which I have some pictures here I'll pull up. I mean, going from this guy.
Especially in 1990.
Right.
This and Home Alone. These are his two roles.
The same year, but this dude is also this guy. Like, I don't know. It's just so impressive.
I read that especially for him, he didn't take it very seriously. He didn't think the film was going to be a hit, so he just went as broad as possible and cartoonish as possible. It's like, nobody's really going to see this. It's not going to be a big deal. So
and then it's like
he just like went 100% on it, which is awesome.
The Guinness World Record holder for #1 in the box office for sure. Hayes, any other thoughts on what makes this film so timeless?
No, I think Virginia and Caleb have really hit on it. Like, I think to summarize what both of them are saying, the people that created this film were artists and craftspeople and took very careful attention to detail. Even though they wrote the script in 12 days or whatever, it's very well constructed. I mean, not to always view it through the lens of music, but John Williams wasn't hired, like he didn't do bad movies. Do you know what I mean? Like, like and Caleb was talking about the culmination of the kind of 80s, kind of like being, what do I want to say, like focused on this movie or something like that. I think you can see that we have an iconic director, producer, composer, like what's going to happen. A timeless movie is going to be created. That's what happens when you put those three people together, you know?
Definitely. Well, I think the music is such a significant part of it. And I know in past podcasts we've talked about, sometimes leaning too heavily on music can be a bit of a crutch for a movie. Of if you just have the score of the film guide the emotion of it, but you don't have anything visually that's helping you with that, that's a problem. But with this, you could have them totally separate, but together it just makes this incredible experience. So, Hayes, do you want to tell us about John Williams? Because you kind of like him, right?
Yeah, he's okay. Yeah. No, John Williams, like, I don't know, for a guy who's what do I want to say? He was educated, obviously. I don't know. Do I summarize the whole John Williams thing? Yeah, because we might have some new people. Who knows, right?
Go for it.
John Williams. He went to, he was raised in Queens, had a lively childhood, didn't end up going to college until later after he was like out of the military. But when he did go to college, he went to Juilliard. So he's like trained at the best conservatory in the country. Went on actually in the 50s and 60s. He was a session musician. He wasn't even really known as a composer until like the mid 70s. But he played with Henry Mancini, the like famous, composer for television and stuff like that. John Williams is actually the one who plays the piano part on the Peter Gunn theme.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Which is like, I love that. That's one of my favorite, like, random bits of knowledge that nobody cares about. But
Mancini's the man. He's great.
Like all of those classic kind of noir-esque whatever kind of TV shows that had his soundtracks and stuff. That was great stuff. Anyways, that's where Williams cut his teeth as a composer, was in the kind of like TV realm. Mid 70s, he starts getting picked up by Spielberg, obviously, to score all of his movies and stuff like that, and the rest is history. As far as his style goes, people describe him as a neo-romantic composer. So he borrows from like Tchaikovsky and Wagner and these very kind of like grandiose, emotive composers of the late 19th century, and there's Sarah's favorite tidbit that comes from these composers is the leitmotif, which is John Williams, like that's his like, the ace up his sleeve or whatever. Every time he has a distinct musical motive for every character or emotional theme in all of his movies that is then reflected very analogous in the visual imagery and stuff like that, like Sarah alluded to. So that's why he's kind of a legendary film composer. He fleshes out the emotion of the entire movie in his soundtrack.
So, Hayes, what's an example of a leitmotif that people would understand to like really get that concept?
Yeah, man, I'm trying to think. Oh, obviously, number one leitmotif ever, the Jaws theme. But like when you hear that, what happened? Who is there?
A shark.
Bruce.
Yeah, exactly. like you never see him, but he's there. You know what I mean? So that's the easiest example of a leitmotif, a distinct musical motive that the viewer will always associate with either that character or theme every time it comes up. That's treated a little differently in Home Alone, by the way, but it's still present.
Now, what's that term? And I always forget, and I always have to text you and ask you what the answer is.
Text painting. I know exactly what you're
Text
talking
painting,
about.
yes, because I think that's very prominent in this film. And as I said before we hopped on, the intro music, which is just so iconic when you see the little house and then it lights up, and the score is so mischievous,
Yes.
and it's kind of alluding to danger. It feels a little darker. You have more bass tones coming in, but then it also feels like somebody like tiptoeing around the house.
Well, it's really interesting what Williams does in the intro music for this movie, because it's a technique borrowed directly from classical composers called an overture. He takes every theme that's going to be presented in the ensuing work, the movie, and presents it in an interwoven composition. So that little mischievous theme that you're talking about, that's from the tune. Oh shoot, I need to look at my notes because I can never remember the names. The House. It's a Harry and Marv's theme. So like that mischievous thing that you're hearing, that's whenever Harry and Marv are around, that music is being played. And then, right? Isn't that crazy? And then Somewhere in My Memory is kind of the other one that we get to hear, which is that tune that plays when Kevin's reunited with Mom at the end of the movie and all that stuff.
And that's
Which is
like,
kind of unusual for Williams, because that's a full song that he hired a lyricist to collaborate with, and there's full like lyrics throughout it and everything.
Yeah, there's not really anything else like that in his catalog, right? It's mostly like,
I think he's got the song from Superman.
Yeah, that's true.
That kind of like Margot Kidder like raps in the movie during the flying scene, but like it's an actual song that you can listen to as well. Yeah.
Do you think that it's because of the kind of choral theme of it being a holiday film is maybe why he did lyrics? Because like, I mean, you said it at the beginning, like choirs and stuff kind of sing this song and perform it now. Like, do you think that might have been why he decided to add lyrics?
I think so. There are some theories about this online that I've read. I can't claim to have generated any of this knowledge myself, but there were some good articles I was reading about people thinking that because of the holiday theme, he was actually, and he succeeded at this, he was trying to recreate an iconic Christmas song, you know what I mean, to give the movie itself, and then ended up creating an iconic Christmas song that people still sing. Yeah, so it's interesting.
Yeah, something I just thought of too is what this movie's soundtrack did for the 50s and 60s pop songs that are in it. Because I don't really remember throughout the 80s those songs being the staples that you think of today, the Chuck Berry song. And
Yeah.
I think that this was a huge boost for that era of Christmas songs that we kind of take it for granted today, but in 1990 it was kind of a different landscape. I feel like I just don't remember hearing those much before Home Alone, and then after Home Alone you hear those songs every year.
That's funny to think about. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense because at that point those songs were like 35 years old, so they were starting to be played on oldies radio, which was a
and they
huge
were sort of
staple
out of fashion, and this sort of brought them back into fashion, which
that you could be nostalgic about it, right? Or something.
Yeah.
It wasn't just dated.
Right.
that's really interesting. It's amazing what a movie can do to have ripple effects like that, like reviving songs or starting trends or whatever it is. Yeah, that's...
Well, now that you're talking about the, what was it with like this, oh God, with the bump bump and it being the shark, what is that called again?
Leitmotif.
Leitmotif.
Yeah, it's a German word.
Well, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, right. Like the dun 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 dun, dun. And you always know the indie's going to come in. I'm like, oh, dang. Or like, any of the other things that John Williams has done, a little bit of Jurassic Park, like, oh, now Jeff Goldblum's going to come in and take his shirt off, and like, you know what I mean, like you have those moments where you're like prepared.
Right, like
yes,
you know exactly what's happening.
Oh. Also, side note, because I love any excuse to talk about this, when I lived in LA, we lived just at the end of the block of a club where Jeff Goldblum and his little jazz quartet or quintet had a residency for a while, so we went to see him a couple times, and he would, ahead of each show, he'd come out and he'd kind of like, he's a really amazing pianist actually, and like jazz singer, but he would come out and he would have like a sheet of like trivia or like questions that he would want to ask the audience to kind of like keep people entertained or whatever, and he used to play the Jurassic Park theme on the piano, and then he would be like, "Did you guys know that I wrote lyrics for this?" And everybody would be like, "What?" And he would just go, "In Jurassic Park, get lost in the dark. I hope I do not get eaten." And it was just like, and he would do that bit every time. I'm pretty sure he's done it on late night, but like it's like a bit that he does. And watching him do it live was great. And one time a kid came and was like, "I wrote a parody, Jurassic Park script. I was just wondering if I could give it to you." He was like, "Well, no, obviously not, because of my agents." He's like, "But I'll read a scene with you right now." And so he invited the kid up on stage and played himself as Ian Malcolm in this like parody. It was very cool, but it reminded me of that, where he was like, "John Williams didn't write lyrics for this, but I did." That was great.
I'm so jealous of that experience.
Girl, he hugged me and touched
Don't even.
my skin. So
Don't even talk to me about that.
It was a big deal. But yeah, he was just really funny and silly, and I thought but that reminded me very much of like, especially Indiana Jones. For some reason, as soon as you said that, that was the like theme that I was like, oh, and then he comes in from the side and he's like running away from a boulder or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I love that. That's really cool.
Well, it's neat that it's not just the leitmotif, but that he puts the text painting into it. So, like Jaws, for example, you hear that, but a shark is coming. Like, cool. All right, so we got a leitmotif for him. But with like Indiana Jones, and I know I've said this before in other podcasts, his leitmotif is also text painting, in that's like dun 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 dun, and it's like you take his story and kind of draw it out of like the highs and lows of it. So it just resonates even deeper with you and adds more depth to the character as well.
Yeah, well, I think what you're describing is like there are musical motives that are specifically for a character, and there are musical motives that are designed to kind of trace that character's journey.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like there are two kind of separate functioning elements at play in the same musical work, and it sucks you in.
Yeah. But again, like going back to the concept of not leaning on music as a crutch, but having it accompany the piece in the best way possible. I don't think that, not to say John Williams couldn't come up with an amazing score or leitmotif for each character or anything, but I think that you have to have a really good character or story or whatever it is that he can score to, so he might not necessarily have that great text painting style motif for Indiana Jones without the complexity of the story. So that goes to reiterate like how this is a trifecta, like a totally perfect storm of a movie, as are some others that these guys are involved with.
Definitely.
All right, I want to shift back to the McAllisters and talk about Kevin. So why don't we start with maybe like favorite scenes in the movie, because this was one, since we were all younger when we watched it, it's one that you're sort of living vicariously through this kid and like, yeah, I wish my parents would leave me alone when they go to Paris first class. That doesn't sound fun, even though as adults we're like, nah, dude, I'm going with them.
Yeah.
But what was maybe a favorite scene, something that you wish you could have done as a kid? Hayes, let's go with you.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's insane. I honestly, I'm such a nerd. Like, when he made himself the dinner, you know what I mean? Like, Virginia was talking about this a while ago. I remember feeling as a kid, I was like, yeah, I could make dinner for myself. You know what I mean? Like, it's the dumb things that sit with you, right? Like, it's like, I'm empowered. I can make macaroni and cheese and
not eat it.
And then set up traps to, like, deal with guys breaking into my house and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, I'm a sophisticated 7-year-old child. I can make my own dinner.
This right here would be my version of the dinner, what he did there.
Yeah.
Which, of course, side by side of him reenacting it. I forget what the commercial was that they brought Macaulay Culkin back for.
Probably like Google Voice or something like that. I feel like they're always getting those good ones.
But man, when he was sitting there eating that sundae and watching the movie, I'm like, man, you are living the dream. That's what I want to do. So actually, I'm going to go home and do that after this. So let's wrap it up.
Remember when you could just literally eat anything you wanted and as much of it as possible, and it was fine?
Yeah.
Remember that? Yeah.
What are you talking about? My heart
That's
hurt when
my
I
life
eat a
still.
pint of ice cream. I don't slowly have like shortness of breath. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Totally worth it, man. Caleb, what about you? What's a favorite scene from this movie?
I mean, my brother and I used to use our house as a toy the same way that Kevin does. You know, we grew up out in the country, and it was definitely all about making your own fun and using what you had to create something. So we were already sort of doing this kind of stuff when Home Alone came out, but especially after it came out, you know, I mean, traps everywhere, just constantly going down in the basement for something and having to run upstairs because I was scared of the furnace. You know, a lot of that. But I think honestly, my favorite scenes are with Kevin and the movie Angels with Filthy Souls, because I loved recording things. I have like hundreds of tapes of myself just like doing like skits and like radio shows and like just repeating like, you know, comedy routines from like Steve Martin records and Monty Python stuff. Just like before I even really understood what I was saying, I have tapes of myself recording that. So my fascination with like recording something or like playing something and timing it out so that it would like affect somebody else was definitely a big fascination for me. And it's also, for me, the weirdest part of this movie, because Kevin can watch whatever he wants. There's no one there to tell him no. Why does he choose, out of all... Now, you know the McAllisters have a gigantic VHS library, okay? There are definitely some off-limits tapes in that library. Just, you know, action stuff, whatever, that he's too young for. Why would he choose a 1938 gangster film that, yes, has violence, but, like, that's the one that he goes for?
Because it
And I
tells
think-
the story of his dad's parentage and how
Well,
his father
yeah,
got
we're getting to that.
Another
Yeah.
conspiracy theory.
Oh, really? I'm literally just guessing these, but I literally
No.
was like, oh, because that's
No,
what
that's how conspiracy
happened
theories
all
are
the
formed,
time.
Virginia. So you're right
Oh,
on track.
I'm
You
just
know?
saying,
Exactly.
and now they're true. Yeah.
It's just funny to me because like it's 1990, like he's watching RoboCop, you know, he's watching Die Hard, he's watching Skinamax, he's watching some late night softcore stuff, you know, like why would he watch this old black and white movie? It's awesome. I just
Yeah.
think that it means that Kevin is a little bit weird, which I love.
Well, yeah, that's great.
He has a refined palate that he's going for the
Yeah, I mean,
classic
you know,
noir stuff.
yeah, and he's shopping for staple items and
Yeah.
you know, making himself a nice dinner with the candles. So it all kind of, you know, fits together.
Speaking of the shopping, one of the many inconsistencies that I would like to point out in terms of his safety is that while he's shopping at the store and the girl asks him, where's your parents or whatever, and he basically is like, I'm not going to tell you, you're a stranger, right? Stranger danger, great job. But then what? An hour later in this film, he goes up to a Santa who he knows is not a Santa because he's 8 and he knows how it works, but he knows that he can get a message to Santa, obviously, and tells him his exact address. Like, guys, we don't do that. We don't tell that to strangers. We don't tell that to chain-smoking Santas who need to remember to put their beard up and then give you Tic Tacs by saying, hold out your little paw. Don't do that.
I mean,
You don't do that.
I disagree. It was worth the risk to get the message to Santa, in my opinion.
Clearly
you know,
it worked, you know?
Like, you're not gonna get those swag gifts unless you take a little risk, you know.
I was very upset about that. I was like, you were doing so good. You were really keeping it together. Also, can we just talk about, I understand it's 1990. I understand there are no cell phones. I get it. Y'all don't have one friend, one other person that lives in the greater Chicago area that can
Yeah.
come and check on your kid? I know it was like the neighbors were also out of town or something, and that was like the
Right.
caveat. I get it. There's a buy-in. I have to allow myself to, but I'm telling you, as a parent now, I watch it and I'm like, no. My sister would be driving from halfway across the state of Florida to make sure that my kid that I somehow left at home was okay. Like, I wouldn't just be like, trying to get a flight back from Paris. Like, I probably wouldn't stay and enjoy it, but come on now. I just have these moments where I'm like, this is, but did they not have any friends because they're in the organized crime division and people were afraid of them? I don't know. But even then, maybe couldn't Joe Pesci or a Joe Pesci type person be working for them to come over and just, make sure everything's okay? I was very upset about these inconsistencies, guys. I just wanted that child to be taken care of.
In 12 days, and all of these were just plot holes.
It was like, it's fine. Nobody will notice.
Oh man, yeah. I don't know. I like the conspiracy theory thing, and now it makes me wonder: like, is Joe Pesci actually hired to attack their house because of the stuff that Dad was doing, and so he is one of the friends that they were calling, but then he's not really a friend,
Oh, wait, are we in conspiracy corner or what?
Let's go to the conspiracy corner. Let's go. Let's dive in deep. All right.
Okay.
We haven't even talked about the
So
plot
could-
yet, people, when we're going conspiracy.
They know what the plot is.
I said we're spoiling this and throwing everything out the window. So coincidentally, before we mentioned the whole thing with the dad and the Sopranos and that tie-in, I had no idea about that because I've not seen the Sopranos in its entirety, and I know I need to go watch that. But
But you understand that they're criminals, yes?
wait, what?
Yeah, they're
Oh
bad
my
guys.
thought they were
God, I had
singers.
no idea.
The mob.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought it was singers.
it's a competitive singing show.
I was doing some very highbrow research today and stumbled upon a TikTok video that showed Kevin's dad and Tony Soprano in one of the scenes, and he was talking about like how could they afford this house and all the whatever, and then said, "Oh yeah, because he works for Tony Soprano." That's right. So I just learned about that today. But Caleb, tell us about the conspiracy theories. What's going on? What do we need to know?
Well, the one that we've been dancing around so delicately is Peter McAllister in the Chicago Mafia? If not, what is his job? Why are they so rich? They have 4 children. His brother has 6 children. There are 10 kids running around that house in the beginning of the movie. And the parents are flying first class, and everybody's going to Paris. And I think he mentioned that it's his other brother who's paying for it. It's not
They're
even
like,
Uncle Frank.
aren't they staying at the other brother's place in Paris or something? Yeah.
So it all kind of works out when you want to follow that theory. However, it does kind of fall apart, Virginia, like you said, with why don't they know somebody who can go over to the house? I mean, that, if this theory is true, then 2 hours later, there would be, armed guards at every corner of that place,
Making
Unless-
him that mac and cheese, literally. And
Yeah.
that would be the
Unless-
joke. There'd be an armed guard in an apron making some easy mac.
Mm-hmm.
Stunting
Unless
his growth as an individual, mind you.
But there could be something going on within the families of the mafia there that there's other things going on behind the scenes. I want to see the prequel TV series that just deals with the mob aspects, and you just know that Home Alone is happening somewhere over in the periphery. But it's like, oh, this is why they couldn't get anybody to go there. So that's
Gang
one
war.
of them.
I think
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
the creepy neighbor, he's one of the protector friends, but he can't just like be guarding the door. He's got to be kind of in the shadows. So that's why he comes in at the last minute, and that's why he's so like scary and intimidating, because he's like, Kevin, you don't want to get involved with this life. I'm a scary dude. I kill people. That's
Yep.
there we go.
That's why his son doesn't talk to him too, because his son was like, "Dad, I can't follow in your footsteps."
Yeah.
I'm tracking this.
Yeah.
Right.
It's an early Michael Corleone sort of thing where he's like, I'm not doing that. That's not me. That's not my family. And then, he gets sucked in. But
Yep.
The prequel series just ends with them buying that house, and the last shot is just the house that we see at the beginning of Home Alone, and the
kind of amazing.
same music plays, and you're just like, oh no, the cycle continues.
I am here for it. So, do we want to do other theories
Yeah.
while we're at it? Or
Oh my God,
Yes, that's
yeah.
why it's conspiracy theories. Come on,
Right.
like
Corner.
right? Yeah.
We're in the corner. Let's go for it.
there's a big theory that Kevin grows up to be Jigsaw from the Saw franchise, and this is 100% true.
I both
His-
love and hate that.
Yeah. his I don't know. You look it up. Look up Kevin McAllister, Jigsaw. There's lots on that. So the other really fun one is the Elvis conspiracy theory.
Of course, there's an Elvis conspiracy, right?
Of course there is. So you see over her shoulder there, this fellow who has a passing resemblance to Elvis. I think this all came out in about 2015 or 2016. I started to see like all these articles about like, was Elvis in Home Alone? And it's supported by a really shocking amount of information, which is, first of all, the resemblance is there, and you can see Elvis in a beard in a Western that he made. The guy does a little head tilt that people have side-by-side comparison videos of Elvis doing the same head tilt in concert, which is really fun. Elvis would have been 55 in 1990, so, it's age appropriate-ish. But even better is that the movie that Chris Columbus directed before this was 1988's Heartbreak Hotel, which is a movie about some teenagers who kidnap Elvis and try to force him to be romantic with their mother. It's a little bit convoluted. It wasn't a big hit. Imagine that. But what if Elvis saw Heartbreak Hotel? Because of course he did. Big movie buff. And he called up Chris Columbus and was like, hey, whatever you're doing next, I would love to be a part of it. It'll be our little secret. Let's have fun. Could happen.
It's not the most outlandish Elvis theory that I've heard, I gotta say,
I will spoil the
In this
fun.
movie too. It's wild.
Right.
Did you say Tupac is in this too?
Yeah, it's just like
He's one of the polka guys.
yeah.
But I mean, really, like
Great
if you look at this, and I know this shot is kind of hard to see the details of, so you can Google the picture later, but for a background extra, I feel like, and he is out of focus a little bit, but just his look kind of pulls your eyes towards that part.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, Virginia, you've been a background actor before. You understand how you want to fill the space, but you don't want the attention to be pulled away from the lead actor in the scene or whatever's going on, right?
No.
You blend in. You don't want to stand out. You don't do a song and dance to call all the attention, right?
Most of it is just walking, and then if you do some really awful stuff, like now, because I did it for a long time, I like see it, and it's like a Where's Waldo kind of a vibe where you're just like, you get pulled out of it. There's like historically bad extra in that movie Garden State in the background of a scene with Natalie Portman and Zach Braff, and she's just drinking, but she's like and like it's one of those where you're just like, oh my god, why didn't you take that person out? But I'm having a hard time seeing where Elvis is, so can we walk me through this, because I clearly have corrective lens issues, but like
He's the guy between the two ladies. He's got
It's
like
the guy that looks like Elvis.
It's over her left shoulder.
the bearded
Elvis.
fellow,
The
Yeah.
beardy guy. Yeah, it's beardy Elvis.
he
And I
just
really,
looks like a guy from like inside the actor's studio. He doesn't look like Elvis.
okay, watch it again. I encourage you to watch this scene again. You will never unsee it. You
Okay,
will always see
all
Elvis.
right. I'm just saying he looks like Sean
better when it's
Connery as
moving.
played on Saturday Night Live. In
It's
that.
always good to have a skeptic in the group, though. You know what I mean?
That's
Like
true.
someone's got to keep us
I
grounded.
legitimately was going like this because I couldn't see it.
Yeah,
so
is that
I wasn't
Elvis?
giving you an actually skeptic face.
I'm gonna try to
Unfortunately,
find a better picture here.
The
Now
theory
you guys
has
are gonna like prove. You guys are like, he does look like Elvis. He does.
the theory has been debunked by the actor himself. I think it was a guy named Gary Grott, who was an extra
I love
for
that you
some
know
other.
his full name, his actor.
This
He's
is
an actor.
Conspiracy
Listen,
Corner.
he
It's,
deserves
it's
it.
alliterative, right? We can remember
He
that. Gary
deserves
Grott.
It's
Yeah,
such a
you don't know
fake
Gary
name.
Grott?
But
is
yeah,
so
why
fake.
wouldn't you have
That's
a guy
Elvis's
say,
fake
"Hey,
name."
that was me"?
Gary Grott is Elvis.
It works.
I love that so much.
That's pretty much all I've got for Conspiracy Corner, although there are definitely some others out there. There's a shocking amount of conspiracy theories surrounding Home Alone.
I could
Yeah.
see that though. I mean, it's such a classic. It's got to have stories and craziness to it. So
Yeah, because it's so ubiquitous, right? Like everybody knows it, so you're gonna have that many millions more opinions about what everything means, right?
all right, so let's see. Let's kind of jump back to Kevin being alone, as the title
home.
explains. Yes, he's alone in a house. I saw this note. I think Caleb put this in the notes for us of any fears that came about within your own house after watching this. And I gotta say, hands down, the whole furnace thing, even though our furnace wasn't like that, but I was like terrified of going in the basement because I thought there was gonna be like a furnace monster thing. Did you guys have any irrational fears that came from this?
I think the basement fear was definitely part of my childhood, like in that same kind of way. We didn't have the same furnace, but there was definitely like a sump pump area that I did not want to go near in my basement as a kid.
All sump pumps are haunted. Man.
Yeah, exactly.
I know it.
Well, there was this weird, like Freddy Krueger like looking cabinet with gloves hanging out of it all the time. It was weird, man. I don't know why my parents kept that. Probably to scare me.
What about?
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I feel like that movie Brave Little Toaster also came out
my
in
God.
and around the same time. So it's like any sort of appliance that has like personhood.
That's a sentient being.
Yeah, I don't want a vacuum that's like going crazy and sucking up the rug and then all of a
He
sudden
was
it's
so
getting.
mean.
I just don't. I don't need any of that. So the fact that they really did like they gave it almost like like teeth and face and like
Yeah.
and then the sounds, no, thank you. No, thank you.
I was just
rewatching it. Sorry, rewatching it after not seeing it for a long time. The furnace like speaks. Like there is a voice. In
Yes.
there. They put it right in there. I didn't notice that.
Not a
until-
fan. Not a fan.
terrifying. This all just makes me think. I was making Christmas cookies recently, and of course I had those like stupid goofy eyes that they put on your ice cream at the ice cream place if you're 2 years old or 33 or whatever.
Or you're 33. Don't worry, my wife does it too. It's okay.
Yes, the goofy eyes. And I was putting them on the cookies and like, wow, I'm personifying these cookies like an idiot. Cool. I wonder where that came from. Oh yeah, because I grew up watching things like Brave Little Toaster where a vacuum is very mean, and I really loved a blanket that had eyeballs. So dumb. Oh my God. Okay, so going back on the fear thing, what about the neighbor? Did you guys, after watching this or even before, have a neighbor that you're like, oh, he definitely killed somebody, chopped him up into pieces? Anybody?
I hope not.
We
I
lived
totally
out in the middle
did.
of nowhere. We didn't have any neighbors.
Yeah.
Our neighbors were the monsters in the woods across the street, which I talked about on our witch episode. But yeah, that's all I got.
Sarah,
We
I gotta
had-
hear about your neighbor though. Yeah.
There was a house at the end of the street that like there was an old guy that lived there that you never really saw, and at some point he moved out. Like I swear that house was just abandoned forever, but the neighbor kids and I like came up with stories about how he murdered somebody or he died in there and is haunting it or whatever, and no doubt it's because of Home Alone. But there was nothing like spooky about the house. It was just a normal house, but I don't
Yeah.
know. Glad I'm the only one here that puts goofy eyes on cookies. And
That makes false accusations about
Yeah.
innocent people in your neighborhood,
I know,
Sarah.
I
He
know.
didn't die. He had to move because all of a sudden people were like, "Is he a murderer?"
Right. These kids said he murdered someone. I got to get out of here.
Poor old Fred Krueger. He didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Man, we've covered a lot of ground. What else do we need to talk about today?
Buzz
Buzz
Yeah.
sucks. Sorry.
sucks.
Buzz sucks. Also,
True.
everybody being named Buzz in the 90s. All right, that's not a name. Forget
Kind of
it.
a 90s
Like-
moniker.
Well, and also, who has a tarantula as a pet? I'm sorry, but spiders are gross, so get
Lots
out of
of
here.
kids in the 90s. It was a hot pet in the 90s for sure.
Why?
No.
Just
You
go
know,
with like gerbils or something.
No,
Edgy.
my sister was into the like arachnids and stuff like that for a while, and like the little crabs, and stuff like that.
Hermit crabs are cute.
No way. That is the creepiest thing ever. I would always find it in the hallway because it got out of its little terrarium.
Well, maybe keep a lid on top of the cage, man.
Maybe it wasn't my pet, so that wasn't my responsibility. And why am I being terrorized anyway?
I don't know.
Guys, I just had a guinea pig, like a normal kid, just a guinea pig, which is a normal animal that is small and able to be taken care of and placed in a glass cage.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want anything that's a bug.
No, I gotta say, like when I was watching Home Alone
Skeleton.
as a kid, I judged the fact that he had a tarantula. You know what I mean? Like that was like a big red flag for me. Like normal kids don't have these as pets. It's not a dog. I'm scared. This is weird.
Well, his father is a mafia don, so
Yeah,
he gets whatever
that's
he
true.
wants. Whatever weird idea comes into his head, Peter says, "We'll make it happen."
Yeah. Yikes.
Well, speaking of spiders, maybe we should talk about the pranks in the movie. And
Yeah.
you know, there was a Mythbusters episode where they were trying to, I don't want to say like debunk the pranks, but kind of go through and assess how violent they were, and
How
there
they
have
would
been
all for sure give you a concussion and you would
Oh, right.
just, like 100% be
Yeah, like and brain hemorrhaging,
Yeah.
stuff like that. You know.
Daniel Stern has like an imprint of the iron on his face, and I was like, "Your brain is bleeding." Like,
right.
What is happening?
And here's Caleb's grandma just laughing away,
Yeah.
thinking it's so
Get enough of
funny.
that. She could not get enough of it.
Yeah, I'd have gotten along with your grandma.
So, what are some of your, I don't want to say favorite, like, oh man, I really loved when he inflicted this pain on this person, but like, what are the best pranks that he did in Home Alone 1?
Well, I said it before we got on mic, but I was rewatching bits of this movie today on my lunch break, and I was about to like walk out the door to go back to work, and my husband was like, "Oh wait, hang on, this is the best scene." He is in his 30s, a grown man, and it was the scene where Joe Pesci, finally makes it up the icy stairs, which I still think to me is like my favorite physical comedy of the film, is them just both trying to like get up the stairs, because I've done that when I moved to Michigan from California by way of Florida. I was that person. But there's this great scene where Joe Pesci opens the door and Kevin has set up like a flamethrower. And yes, okay, so this is great because for two reasons, right? One, that face, mwah, chef's kiss. But two, the camera work here is great because there's a quick like pan and scan kind of at the beginning of the shot, and then I'm pretty sure that they do just a small push in, and so it's very quick. Like it's not a cinematically like set up shot, but it does this quick move, and then just freezes on his face, just going wah, and it is so funny. But the best part of it was watching my full adult husband just bent over cackling as if this was just like the first time he had seen it, the best thing he'd ever seen. And at one point I was like, "Do you think that this is like one of your all-time favorite movies?" And he stopped for a second. He was like, "No, but it is one of my all-time favorite Christmas movies for sure, because it's just classic." And it was just like the idea that he's thought about it so much and then seen it so much that like he knew the beat. He was like, wait, don't leave yet. And then still after, I mean, he's probably seen it 30 times, he's in his mid-30s and watched it as a child multiple times. So like the fact that those beats are still funny, it's just nice watching people enjoy things. And like I would have also just thought it was funny, but then just like watching him watch it was just great.
It's the nail in the foot for me.
Oh, you stole mine. You stole mine. That's a great one.
Nail, foot trauma, eye trauma, that's going to get me every time. But man, I know it's coming every time I watch this. I just rewatched it and I knew it was going to happen. And it's so traumatizing.
Yeah.
He steps
I
on
don't
the nail
know.
so slowly, though. It's not like in a quiet place.
Yeah, you'd
You
like
know what I
notice
mean?
it.
It's like, yeah, he was like, I'm like, bro, you could have moved that foot at any moment. You did not have to keep putting weight down on that.
Yeah.
It's-
but
I
even-
can't even think about it.
Even the sound, like Virginia, as
Yeah.
you're doing that, I can just hear the visceral sound design of it. Like,
Yeah,
his
amazing.
I hate it. Yeah, I think the foot with the nail is, I hate that one so much. And also the walking on the broken ornaments too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Marv got the worst of it
Yeah.
in this movie. You know what I mean? Like, I guess
Mhm.
Pesci got the blowtorch on the head, but just the the foot trauma, like Kayla was talking about. Like they're just
lot
like
of foot
going after
trauma.
Marv's feet.
Mhm, mhm.
Tall patch though that's through the hat, and the next scene where it's just like his
Yeah.
red like cranium, and then just like the outline of the hat around. It's so funny. It's so good.
Someone on Facebook just commented, Sarah, by the way, about the Foley
You-
on the
and-
nail going into the foot.
You know who that is
No.
that is commenting?
No.
Virginia's husband.
What?
Oh my god!
Hilarious.
Hey babe, we're just talking about you.
It is just so disgusting and so visceral. But like these, so I tried to count tried to count as many of the pranks as I could, and I was getting mixed up with Home Alone 2.
Yes.
But yeah, pretty gnarly, a lot of the stuff that's going on. But the blowtorch to the head, I mean, that is horrific.
yeah.
Just terrible, like,
that's-
'cause it melts
that's
through the hat.
actual- That's fire on human skin. Like you can't do that.
Yeah.
You know.
The other thing
Oh, and his
too.
hand too had the door handle, and then they pull back that shot after his.
Oh
hand.
yeah, with the M on it.
No, and it was like all burnt, and you're like, that is scar tissue. Like,
Right.
whew.
Yeah. I don't know. You know, Virginia, earlier you were talking about how this movie causes anxiety for the sake of being a parent, right? And then we mentioned the anxiety of not living up to the McAllister standards of being in your 30s and 40s and making millions of dollars. The other thing, too, as I'm watching this, as a venue operations manager and knowing safety protocol, I see this and I'm just thinking, like, one time we had a magician that was coming here, and when we were doing some kind of pre-production stuff and planning out what they were doing, he was going to be using just that flashbang stuff for a trick. Just, hey, and he said it so nonchalantly, like, yeah, I'm doing flashbang. I'm like, actually, even though it's just a quick little spark and smoke, I have to have the fire marshal here. We have to have the fire department here, and they have to be on either side of the stage with fire extinguishers ready. Like, you have to get a permit just to have a quick little flashbang smoke for and here's a dove. So I'm looking at this and thinking, like, you know, we talked about it being a pretty moderate budget for this, but most of it had to have gone to insurance and all the specialists on site, like the
Oh,
fire
yeah.
department, the
Flame
EMTs.
retardant curtains there.
Yeah, yeah, like
Yeah.
you have this very crazy looking blowtorch going on, but then you have presumably flammable curtains right there and the door too. And yeah, there's just so many logistical concerns here that I would not want to be part of this production. That would be a production nightmare.
That's definitely a nerdy thing, and I love that about you, Sarah.
I swear it's ruined movies for me. Or even like the last time that I went to a concert, which is a sad thing to think about, but it was like a basement show a year or two ago, and I'm down there like, this is a fire hazard. How are all these 100 people going to get out? There's only one exit, one stairwell. It's very narrow. It doesn't even have a railing. Like fire
basement
code
show.
issue. I know.
Oh, very unmetal of you.
Yeah. It's
I
so
know,
not
it's
metal.
terrifying.
You
I just
let
try to
her
be
in.
safe. All right. This is why I would never write Home Alone, because that would just cause way too much anxiety.
That Home Alone would be a 3-minute short for me, because she would just turned around in the car once she realized that Kevin wasn't there, and she would be like, sorry babe, we missed you, let me pick you up so you can come to France with us.
Yeah.
End of movie. And just
You
be
know,
done.
that makes me think, like, if Home Alone were written today, and where it takes place, of course, you can't say, like, oh, there's no cell service or whatever the restrictions on technology would be, because there's coverage and electricity and internet and everything to, like, every corner of the earth, really. So doing a modern adaptation of this, I don't think would work really at
Well,
all, right?
Unfortunately, they are doing a modern adaptation of it. It's coming to Disney Plus, I think. In the
Yes.
Ew, really?
Yes.
But how are you going to do that? I mean, how are
I
you
don't know.
going to
We'll find out.
live in the world of cell phones and say you can't, you know, hop on your, like, home security, what is it, Nest or whatever, that has, like,
Yeah.
cameras around the house? How can you not hop on that? Or somebody across the street has surveillance, or you have some kind of alarm system, or you can text whoever or tell Alexa to turn on a speaker?
Our hackers, duh. Okay.
Is that
so
what
they
it
can
is?
pass everything, Sarah.
Well-
Suspend your disbelief.
I think this guy definitely looks like a hacker. So.
He's more like a hack, right?
Yeah, there you go. But Do you guys think that the abundance of technology and, you know, everything with internet and resources we have kind of hinders the creativity for movies and being able to suspend that disbelief?
I mean, theoretically, yeah, but then you just get to be a better writer and you figure it
Yeah,
out. You know, I mean, I can't do it, but like, it's a good challenge for modern writers to say, okay, we got all this stuff. Well, and modern audiences are way more apt to kind of look at those little things, and you know that unfortunately they want to pick everything apart. They want to say, oh well, this is unrealistic and that's crazy and that would never happen and whatever. So as a writer, you've got to think ahead of them. You've got to like be 2 steps ahead and think, you know, yes, you think that, but here's why, you know. So I think I don't know, I think it's a good challenge. I don't want to do it at all, and I don't want a reboot of Home Alone, but you know, it's going to happen.
I mean, I didn't want anything after the second sequel, and look what happened to that. You know what I mean? So,
How many are there? There's like 5 of them, right?
yeah.
Too many. I stopped counting.
Well, you know, Hughes was involved in the third one that
Yeah.
doesn't star Culkin.
Yep.
I think he might have written it or produced it or something. I haven't seen the third one. I'm not going to watch a Home Alone movie without Macaulay Culkin. I'm just never going to do it. You know, so
Well, and the story was concepted with specifically him in mind. I mean, you wouldn't have this movie without him.
right.
And we'll just pull up a lovely picture there. But would this movie be the same with somebody else in his place? I mean, in this era, we're not talking about a remake now because certainly there's other kid actors that could fill the role. But in that time, I mean, this kid
Yeah.
was amazing.
I'm
Well-
thinking about, Culkin in 1990, Home Alone in 1990, and the phenomenon that he was. I don't know how to compare it to anything else. You know, I mean, he hosted SNL. A 10-year-old boy hosted SNL.
Can you compare it to a young Drew Barrymore though? Because I would say maybe when did E.T. come out? 82?
82, yeah.
So like 8 years before that, she was theoretically a version of
But she
that
wasn't
Christmas
but she
number.
wasn't the star of the film. She was definitely a breakout star, and she was
Didn't
a
she host
huge
SNL
talent.
too though? At like a
That's-
super young age? Maybe I'm just projecting. I thought she did a lot when she was like really young. I know she met Princess Diana. I watch
Yeah.
her talk show now.
That's maybe the only other one. The only other thing I thought of was in 1990, Fred Savage also hosted SNL.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah.
Fred Savage was 14, and Macaulay Culkin was 10.
With
Yeah.
David
And it's
Bowie, too? Come
With
on.
David Bowie, not even being Bowie, but he's in this band Tin Machine playing on SNL, which is so weird. And I don't know why George Wendt is in there either.
I was going to say, and you can see Mike Myers and
Yep,
then
all the way
Rob
to the left.
Schneider is like ducked behind, trying to like, look out from behind the leather
So
jacket.
weird.
That's wild.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know who the equivalent would be nowadays who is a child star of that age who can appeal to all age groups and have such a big hit. You know, it's too specific now. It's like, yeah, there are child stars who appeal to the TikTok generation, or you know, a music kind of person, or somebody who's cutesy, but like who does it all? Macaulay Culkin did it all in
Because he
1990.
was in My Girl too, right? That was
My
like
Girl,
Liam
yeah.
Neeson
Huge
one,
movie.
too,
Love
yeah.
that movie so much.
Huge. Yep.
Yeah,
And-
I'm sitting here trying to think about it, and there's nobody. Like,
I don't know who that is.
the one that came to mind doesn't quite fit, but you know, Daniel Radcliffe, and we're growing up with him as Harry Potter, and then it's not until he's older that he starts getting into more dynamic roles. But yeah, it doesn't quite compare.
Yeah, and he really went there because he was like, I was Harry Potter, now I'm doing Equus. I'm giving you range.
Yeah,
Like,
nice.
he really was like, I'm stepping out.
That
He's actually
pendulum always
very
swings
funny,
really
though.
far.
Yeah, he's on a show on TBS though, with Steve Buscemi. That's like a anthology show, where the first season Steve Buscemi like played God, and he was like an angel. And I'm blanking on the name of the show. I'll look it up. But he's a good example of someone who I'm glad kind of at least seems to break out a little bit from the kid vibes. Now I guess I need to know what that show is called.
Quick shout out to my boy Johnny Fossum, who's watching.
Yeah, he's
And
talking about George Wendt.
he mentioned that George Wendt is there because of the Michael Jackson Black or White video, where he famously is Macaulay Culkin's dad in the beginning.
Oh,
He
right.
gets
Yeah.
like blasted out of his chair into outer space.
That's right.
Also, George Wendt is Jason Sudeikis's like uncle or something like that. Like, there's a connection there between them. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure too.
That tracks, yeah.
Totally.
I can see that.
Also, the show with Daniel Radcliffe is called Miracle Workers. It's on TBS. You should check
I've
it
never
out.
even heard of it. That's crazy.
They didn't do a ton of promo for it outside of like social media. I saw a lot of Facebook stuff for it, but they did the first season, and then every subsequent season they've had like a different setting. So I think the second season was like set in like medieval Europe. But it's the same cast each season, and Buscemi's really funny in it. So
That's crazy. That sounds
Yeah.
awesome. Anyway, Home Alone. Sorry.
Well, just Macaulay Culkin being amazing in that role. And I love, too, the fact that you have his brother in it as well. I'll pull up this picture here.
You're in. Yeah, it's Fuller.
who is now like star of Succession on HBO? Like those
Yeah.
Culkin kids.
Yeah.
Save some talent for the rest of us.
Yeah.
Right.
He's amazing in this movie.
He is
Fuller
so
is-
good.
So good.
It's
That
incredible.
outfit I would wear like today though. Like those pants are dope. Love a suspenders moment. Those
Are
sleeves
they rainbow suspenders? It's hard to tell with that angle, but I'm into it. I love it. But yeah, to have a sibling in the movie too who is equally talented, but not stealing the spotlight necessarily. It's just the dynamic of everybody in this movie. And the uncle, he's got such a punchable face. I hate him so much.
Did you guys know that was written for Kelsey Grammer? What? But he couldn't do it for various reasons. But 1990, Kelsey Grammer, that was supposed to be Uncle Frank.
Don't worry,
He
he made
wouldn't
up
be
for
as
it by
good.
doing the Expendables too. So
Yeah.
it was fine. Kelsey Grammer still getting work.
I just can't imagine him in this role. Like, I feel like this guy is just such a jerk and it fits. And I just couldn't imagine Kelsey Grammer pulling that off. He would give a totally different flair to it. But doesn't he like steal the silverware on the airplane or something like that? Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
real silver. Take it.
Put it in your purse. Put it in your purse.
Oh my God.
There's another. Sorry to go back to Conspiracy Corner.
Oh, I
but
love it.
It's always there.
There is one more thing, which is an early draft of the script revealed that Uncle Frank orchestrated the robbery because he wanted some of, like, I don't know.
I believe it. Look at that face. Look at that
He
face.
like hired Harry and Marv to break into the house, and he was going to give them a cut and like get the stuff that he wanted, which is insane.
I think
I'll
that
believe
tracks.
that. That dude seems like trash. So.
Yeah, zoom in on
Yeah.
that face.
Come on.
Yeah, you can't look at that face and tell me that he's a good guy,
Right.
Slime ball. Yep.
I like these conspiracy theories, and I really wish that somebody would write like a prequel to it, so we lead up to it knowing what these plans were, or maybe that's what the reboot is going to be, is going to bring this stuff to light, and we'll
Yeah.
get to meet Elvis and all that good stuff.
All this
I wish
stuff.
I wish I knew anybody talented in Grand Rapids who could write, who could write music, who could act, anybody who could like pull this off.
If you know those people, please comment below.
Yeah.
Please tell us who they are.
That's awesome.
Oh man!
I'm
All
in.
right. So another lovely note here from Caleb. Can you tell us about some potential plagiarism in other films that were around the same era, and what's up with that? These are movies actually I've never heard of, so please teach me something.
Yeah, I saw this in the notes, and I am very interested, sir. So delve
Well,
into it.
it's just one movie, but there is, of course, a classic film that we all know and love, where a child has to defend his home by himself using whatever he has at hand from a home invader. And of course, we're talking about 1989's Deadly Games, aka Dial Code Santa Claus, the French film that was not available in the U.S. until just recently, 2018. It showed up on Shudder, but it's one of those things that I'd heard about for a long time. And it was sort of like the Home Alone, like the actual Home Alone. So, yeah, it's.
Is it like thriller suspense? I mean, it's on Shudder, so I'm assuming there's an element of
Yeah, but it's comedic and it's
Okay.
weird because it's French, and French things are weird to us. But there is a psychopathic Santa Claus who decides to break into this house, and this kid has to use all of his toys and anything he has at his disposal to create these traps and use weapons that he can makeshift weapons and things like that to fend him off. It's a really weird movie, but again, this came out in 1989. Home Alone came out 1 year later. The director of Dial Code Santa Claus unsuccessfully sued the filmmakers of Home Alone, made a big deal about it. But I think because the movie was not available in the U.S. or wasn't shown, I think the case sort of just went away. And personally, I don't think that John Hughes ripped this off. I think it was just one of those fascinating cases of two people having the same idea at roughly the same time. I don't think that John Hughes needed to rip off any ideas. He had plenty of good ideas on his own. It's something that could have come to anybody. But watching Dial Code Santa Claus, aka Deadly Games, is a real trip for a Home Alone fan. So check it out on Shudder.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch this one. Actually,
It's really weird. It could almost be a new Christmas classic for you if you're looking for that.
Well, and certainly I can see how people would think that it could be a ripoff, that Home Alone could be a ripoff of this. But your point of it just being kind of the collective unconscious, that idea is floating around, and we have so many people on this planet, it's inevitable that two people have similar, if not exact same ideas at the same time, and one looks more like a Rambo film and the other one is, a family-friendly classic.
Yeah.
But it's so true. Like, I remember my first experience with that for writing in grad school, my first year. I'm like, oh, I have this genius idea, and I pitch it in my class, and I'm writing it, and it's like super awesome. And where I was living on campus, it was in dorms, and there's other people in the program too, and there's specifically a Kids Lit program. And I hear through the grapevine that somebody in the Kids Lit department was writing a children's book on the same friggin' story.
No.
But they hadn't heard my idea, I swear, because I hadn't told anybody. It was just my class that knew about it. And then I heard it. I'm like, what are the odds? But really, mine was a super, super loose adaptation of Hansel and Gretel, but put in the Depression era with circuses and that kind of thing. And she was kind of going in that same vein. And it's true, though. There's no original idea. Everything's a pull off of whether it's like the Hero with a Thousand Faces, hero's journey kind of thing or whatever, or just social cultural influences that just get in your subconscious. And
let's be real too. How many times has this happened with other movies too? Like, should we talk about The Illusionist and The Prestige?
Right.
Or
So
like
many,
any of that stuff,
Yeah. I remember when that happened, those movies came out, and then the next year it was another theme. I think it was like a football thing. And then the year prior to that was like a hockey thing. There were a couple of movies that came out that were like the same story, but
Yeah.
You could probably do that for every single year of cinema, and that would be a really fun list.
yeah.
Just
Well,
Friends
It's like
and
pop
Friends
songs
with
or something,
Benefits. Sorry, that was a Justin Timberlake movie. It's not.
Well, all right, guys. I think we dissected a whole lot about Home Alone. Is there anything else that we want to throw in here before we wrap it up?
I love this movie. I love John Williams.
I
yeah. John.
Oh, Deep
John,
Impact
yeah.
Armageddon.
I was trying to think of that. Like,
Yeah,
Oh,
Deep
yeah.
Impact and
Armageddon.
Armageddon. Oh my gosh! And obviously, Armageddon's way better because of the Aerosmith soundtrack. But
Oh my
anyway,
god.
I cannot exaggerate this enough or like emphasize this enough. That song makes me want to die. Like, because it was everywhere. It was everywhere. It was everywhere. And also, spoiler alert, Aerosmith is not that great. So that song being everywhere, cause it just it makes me want to claw my eyeballs out, and that's not even how you receive music.
That
You
is
don't
a
even
very
receive music
visceral
through your
response.
eyes. Like,
There
I
are
hate it so much. And isn't Ben Affleck in that movie too?
Oh,
With,
yeah.
like, and
Yeah, he does the animal cracker thing, yeah.
Get out of here
Tyler,
with that.
yeah.
No,
We've all
no,
seen it. We know it.
no.
There are many different eras of Aerosmith. So just
Yeah. That,
know that there's a 70s Aerosmith, there's
Yep.
an 80s Aerosmith, there's a 90s Aerosmith, and there's a current Aerosmith. So don't chuck them out.
they're all like 5 different
aside
bands, right?
So yeah. I'm not even a huge Aerosmith fan. I'm just saying.
Maybe we should start like radio clubs so we can talk about music that way, and then we can have an Aerosmith episode.
The only correct answer for me in any of those arguments where it's like, oh, do you like the Beatles or Rolling Stones? Like, even as a child, and this is very much influenced by my mom, I was always like, oh, Led Zeppelin. So like anything else, I was just like, no. Sorry, no. Also, animal crackers now disgust me because that scene is horrifying. So
Oh, that's great.
Oh,
I don't know why I have such. That's a hill I'm dying on, apparently. But I just no.
Hmm.
No.
Yeah.
We've perhaps digressed.
Yeah, maybe. We
Um,
went from paint cans and booby traps to roller skating with the couple song of "Don't Want to Miss a Thing." Right? That's what I think of when I hear that song.
oh, God.
I love it.
Well-
I wanted to bring up one thing,
Yes, sir. Go for it.
which is when we were talking about actors earlier. This is one of those John Candy roles that I kind of forget he's in.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
really?
just forget that I mean, obviously he's great, but I forget he's in this movie until I see it. And
The
I
Polka
know that
King?
I
And
know
then he
that
like
he's
waits for her to recognize. He's like the Polka King of Sheboygan or whatever, and she's like,
it's
and he-
so cute.
he's
Yeah.
so offended that she doesn't know who he is. It's awesome.
Well, he kind of just like he takes it in stride, but he's
I
like,
love
well, I know that that Hughes as a writer was really against people improvising at all. Like he was a very exacting writer. He was like every little and and is like written in the script. But I think that Candy's performance was shot in one day, one very long day, but he allowed him to improvise because he was John Candy, you know? And also, you know, Macaulay Culkin was hired for this, was cast for this because of his performance in Uncle Buck.
I was hoping we were going to talk about Uncle Buck.
So you got to bring Uncle Buck into it. But if that's true, if it's true that he let John Candy improvise, his whole speech when they're in the back of the van about like my relatives had a kid who like they left home alone and he was okay after a few years of therapy and he was left in the funeral home or whatever. You're telling me that John Candy came up with that off the top of his head, like that day? Like that was just within him? That was not in the script? That's insane. Watch that scene again.
He's got the magic.
Ugh, just one of the true kings of comedy.
He's such a
Honestly.
treasure. I love Uncle Buck so much. That
Uncle
movie.
Buck, Great Outdoors.
Oh, yeah.
all that
Oh
stuff.
my god, that
man.
movie.
When
Yeah,
he's
it's-
trying to get her to play his instrument, and he's like, "Come on, give it a try." Like,
And she's like, nah, he's like, come on.
yeah, the fact
Yeah.
that she is made the straight woman in this movie, and she's such a
Right.
comedic treasure too. It really does like lean into how brilliant he was to be able
Yeah.
to kind of pull that out. Yeah, Also, legally, Sarah, can people be in the back of a box truck like that sans seatbelts?
Oh, girl, no, don't even get me started. Actually, this might have been before any seatbelt codes were
It's
changed, so I don't know about
1990,
that.
Y'all don't know what it was like. It was a wild, wild west.
Yeah, it
out
was
there.
crazy, man.
It was the wild Midwest, you guys.
Yes,
Come on.
some cars didn't even have the strap that goes across you, like it
Right,
was-
right.
Mhm.
Exactly. All right. Well, before we hop off here, I guess in the spirit of holiday movies, let's throw out some recommendations for what else to be watching aside from this. Virginia, do you want to go first?
Oh, okay. So there's a movie that is near and dear to my heart, but it is objectively kind of a wild film. It's called The Family Stone.
Ooh.
Some people know about this. Some people have not
Nice.
seen it. It has like a stellar cast, like Diane Keaton, dude from Coach. I can't remember his name. Rachel McAdams is in it. Claire Danes is in it. Sarah Jessica Parker is in it. Like amazing, amazing cast. And it's like a family holiday film. Spoiler alert: the family is kind of mean. Nobody is like lighting anybody's head on fire with like a flamethrower or anything, but it's a little bit contentious film. But it has a really beautiful kind of script and fourth act, and the acting is really good, and I like it a lot. Also talked about this quite at length on my social media recently, but Muppets Christmas Carol, because similarly to, I think, Joe Pesci, not thinking that anybody was going to see this film, so he just really kind of like let himself be loose, and like he just like went there. Michael Caine did that for us, you guys, with an entirely Muppet cast, with giving like Shakespeare performances, and like he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to go that hard, but he did. And apparently he did that because he was like, okay, I'll be in a Muppet movie, but I'm going to act the heck out of this. We're going to be on television, so I had to use a light swear word. But he really was like, I'm going to give it. Like, I'm going to do it, And he did it. And we just rewatched it recently. And I was like, how is he, like, full on crying, being like, Spirit, no, and like really giving it, and he's at the gravesite and he's like, I could change. Like, he is that emotional arc and turn when really you are just talking to a large puppet that is probably being worked at that point by 2 to 3 people. It's magical. And apparently there is a song that's missing from the DVD cut that they cut out, but is there in the VHS cut. And they're bringing it back. They're going to do a re-release or something. I just read about it like a week ago, because that is the late breaking news that I need in my life is a movie that's 20 years old going to finally have a full soundtrack again. And the answer is yes. So those are my 2 right now. There's always like other classics that I'm sure everyone can name, but those are on my radar.
A Muppets Christmas Carol is near and dear to my heart because when I was in the 8th grade, we did a production of that at my middle school, and I was Rizzo the rat, but not in a rat outfit, like we just did human people. And then like a couple years later, I was Chuck E. Cheese, so just went straight and narrow, going for that rat life. That's me.
You were typecast.
You were like, do
Yes.
I have a rodent complex now?
Yeah.
Like,
I
Exactly.
certainly do. I love cheese and scurrying around subways, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you ever
What's
done
up?
like pizza rat stuff?
Oh, yeah. I actually am
Rat
Pizza Rat, you
cosplay.
guys.
Cool.
All right, Muppets Christmas Carol and Family Stone. That was like early 2000s, like 2005-ish, right?
Yeah,
It was, like,
remember it. Yeah,
Post-Wedding Crashers, I think, with Rachel McAdams.
Yes, like she was just on the up and up, but she wasn't quite like Rachel McAdams yet. She's actually like pretty funny in this movie, and she has done a lot in terms of like, sometimes she's the romantic lead or sometimes she's like serious, so she shows a lot of range in this film. But yeah, it's a really good movie. I like it a lot.
That one was a sleeper. I was working at the theater when that came out, and it was a bummer because it's such a stacked cast, but I have to go give that a rewatch.
I feel like it weirdly has kind of gotten its due a little bit. Like it has like you said, it was like a sleeper hit at the time. It hit, I think, a little bit of like cult holiday film status now, because I end up talking to people who are like, yeah, I love that movie. It's such that family's so mean, but like, what a great movie, you know? And so I think the further we get into the 2000s and on, people are like, oh yeah, I gotta hit this one. This is pretty good.
Nice. Good suggestions. All right, Hayes, how about you? What you got?
If it's got stop animation in it, I'm watching it. You know what I mean? That's my Christmas style over here. Rudolph, Frosty, all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
All the Rankin Bass goodness.
Yeah, exactly. And I got to say that, like, my dad, I mean, obviously we're bringing up all these movies like Uncle Buck and, you know, Great Outdoors and all those like almost slapstick, whatever style comedies from the 80s and stuff. Christmas Vacation, got to add that one to the list. You know, that's a classic that I definitely try to revisit every year. But yeah, that's probably it.
Nice.
I feel like Christmas Vacation, which came out in '89, is like the culmination of '80s Christmas.
Yeah.
Where Home Alone in 1990 is like dominates '90s Christmas.
Yep.
Like that's the dividing line.
No, you're totally right. Because I mean, like in '94 or '5, I got a Talk Boy. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about, right? Like the little recorder thing. I was like, Kevin's got one. Hayes got to have one.
I'm glad that you refer to yourself in the third person.
Exactly. Only when talking about the Talk Boy, you know? That's what I used it for, was to talk to myself. Anyways.
All right. Caleb, what about you?
Well, as usual, I have a recommendation that no one will ever check out. But if you're a fan of Old Man Marley, the crazy old neighbor who's not crazy, he's actually a sweet old man. That actor is Robert Blossom. And I would like to put on everyone's radar the film Deranged from 1974.
Oh, I'm definitely watching this one. Yeah.
You can watch it on Prime right now. He's this extreme mama's boy who cannot handle his mother dying. And so he digs her up after she's buried, and he teaches himself taxidermy, and he begins robbing graves and basically rebuilding her from the corpses that he finds and also then later murders. And it's an amazing performance. It should absolutely be in the conversation when anybody's talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's really overlooked as a horror staple of the 70s. It's a deeply unsettling film. Blossom gives a great performance. He's so creepy. He's the same kind of creepy that he is in this movie. But it's like, what if Old Man Marley was actually what they think he is?
Yeah, like
that's the thing. It's like, you know, they look out the window and they're like, Old Man Marley, you know, he probably killed his family. It's like, well, what if you got that movie?
Yikes.
The film is Deranged from 1974.
I'm just going to tell you right now, I will never watch
I
that.
know. No one's ever going to watch it.
I'm not gonna watch it like tomorrow. No joke. That's I'm in.
Just going to keep that one on the back burner.
I do Context Corner, I do Conspiracy Corner, and I do Horrible Recommendations Corner, and that's what I do.
Yeah.
So let's just drive this point home. This right here is Caleb's holiday movie recommendation, folks. Go check out Deranged, the wonderful romp that
And for
is.
those listening on the podcast, it is just a visual of a dang bloody fist. Nobody, I don't need to see that as the red that I'm contextualizing for Christmas, bro. I want a Santa hat, okay? I don't want a bloody hand.
That's the most tame image I could come up with.
I believe you. I believe it. As you were
Yeah.
saying it, my face just kept
Tracks.
contorting into more and more upset. Like,
Don't Google it. Yeah.
I won't. Thank you. I still haven't seen Two Girls, One Cup, and I am proud of that. So
Oh my
I'm
All
God.
right.
not-
Yep. And we are
Yeah,
way
we're
off
really
topic.
deep.
All
Guys,
right.
let's do it.
Cool. I will just go ahead and jump in right here with my recommendation, which is a holiday movie. Thank you so much. So I was going to say Christmas Vacation, but not only because it's an amazing movie, but also because that's another John Hughes film, which is just incredible.
Really?
Yeah, he wrote it.
Huh.
I know that dude, he's everywhere. He's magical. So I'm gonna say we should all really appreciate Elf, which is
yeah.
it's an amazing Christmas movie, but I have a greater appreciation for it after watching the movies that made us, or the holiday movies that made us episode on Netflix that talks about it and goes into the making of and the guy who came up with the concept and partnering with Jon Favreau on that one, and how that was also like a perfect storm of people coming together. The movies that made us episode just is incredible. Like, I got goosebumps watching it. It's just so inspiring how these people put this together. And then Hayes, you talking about like stop motion and claymation and how they brought that into this. It's awesome. And the practical effects of the film, I think that adds to it being a timeless classic. So
Did they do forced perspective?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. So check out Elf, but maybe watch that Movies That Made Us episode first. It's awesome. So awesome.
Cool.
All right, so let me see if I can get this computer to work here. So coming up next I put the wrong information on this. I just realized. For Screen Club, even though this next slide actually says Cinema Lab, I'm sorry I lied to you. For Screen Club, we're going to be doing The Queen's Gambit. So that's going to be Thursday, January 14th of a new year, 2021. Hopefully it'll be better. 6 o'clock, same place. So tune in on Facebook, YouTube, all that. You can always check the podcast later. But Queen's Gambit is streaming on Netflix, and that has been a record-breaking, trend-setting show. I mean, even like the searches on eBay and stuff for chess games and people's interest in it has gone up exponentially. So
Well, that's cool.
join us on that day where we're going to talk about how they made a period piece film about a child prodigy chess player, a binge-worthy show. Quite a challenge, but they succeeded. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out, and then you can join us here. All right, guys. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Anyone who is watching or listening, if you want to help support programs like this, Screen Club and Cinema Lab, our media literacy, if only I was literate, programs that are put on by the Community Media Center, which Wealthy Theater is a department of. So if you want to support stuff like this, you can go to wealthytheater.org/donate. You can also do that at grcmc.org/donate. Either way, you're helping us to keep on doing this. It's been really fun, especially since we can't join in person. We can still connect with people across the internet. If you have any suggestions for shows or movies or anything like that you want to talk about, just message us on social media. Facebook tags are the same as Instagram too. So slide into our DMs with your recommendations of what you want us to overanalyze. We're into it. All right. Yeah, right. Okay. All right, guys. There we go. We've analyzed Home Alone. Hopefully now you appreciate it even more, and hopefully you will tune in next time for The Queen's Gambit, brought to you by Screen Club. So, Caleb, Hayes, Virginia, thanks for taking the time out of your day to do this.
Not a problem.
Until next time.
Peace out.
Bye, guys.
Bye.